Did you know there is a pattern in history that has destroyed three global superpowers in the last 500 years? And right now, the United States is following that exact same pattern, stage by stage, decision by decision. It's almost like we rereading from the same script that led to catastrophe every single time before. In 1590, Spain was the richest empire on earth. They controlled half the world's gold and silver. Their military dominated Europe. Their currency was accepted everywhere. Within 80 years, they were bankrupt. A second-rate power that never recovered. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history. The sun never set on British territory. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Within 40 years, the empire was gone. The currency collapsed. They became America's junior partner. In 1991, the Soviet Union was the other superpower. Nuclear weapons, global influence, satellites spanning the globe. It ceased to exist in just 900 days. Not from war, but from economic implosion. 3 times, 3 superpowers, 3 complete collapses, all following the exact same sequence. And here, what should terrify you, the United States has already completed 5 of the 7 stages. We're not just approaching the pattern, we're deep inside it. This is the story of how empires die, why they always think they're different, and why the math says we're next. And it's happening faster than anyone wants to admit. Before we go through the pattern, you need to understand what imperial collapse actually looks like. Not in textbooks, but in real life what it means when a superpower dies. Imperial collapse doesn't start with an invasion or military defeat. It starts with economic exhaustion. The empire extends beyond its ability to maintain itself. Military bases in 150 countries, wars on multiple fronts, promises it cannot keep, and debts it cannot repay. At first, the decline is invisible. The currency still works. The military still wins battles. The government still makes promises. But beneath the surface, the foundation is cracking. Resources are misallocated. Productive capacity shrinks. The best and brightest leave. Then comes the acceleration. Allies start hedging their bets. Enemies test your boundaries. Trade partners seek alternatives. The reserve currency status erodes. And suddenly, the advantages that made you powerful become your biggest vulnerabilities. Your currency, once demanded by everyone, comes flooding back home. Your military spread across the world becomes unsustainable. Your promises, once guaranteed by strength, become empty words. That's not theoretical. That's what happened to Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. And it happened because they made exactly the same decisions we're making now. They believed their power was permanent. They overextended militarily. They debased their currency. And they refused to accept reality until the collapse was already underway. Let's look at how it actually happened 3 times. The exact same way. Let's start with the first global empire, Spain, from the 1500s to the 1600s. This is the original blueprint. After Columbus discovered the Americas in 1492, Spain became the first true world power. They conquered the Aztec and Inca empires, seizing control of the richest gold and silver mines ever discovered. By 1550, Spanish galleons were bringing home 200 tons of silver per year. By 1600, over 400 tons annually. Spain literally controlled the money supply of Europe. The Spanish real was the global reserve currency. Everyone wanted Spanish silver, and this is where the pattern begins. With a country that controls the world's money and believes that makes them invincible. King Philip II, ruling from 1556 to 1598, had more money than any monarch in history, and he spent it all on empire. Stage 1, military overextension. Spain fought wars everywhere, simultaneously. Against the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, against France and Italy, against Protestant rebels in the Netherlands, against England's navy, wars in the Philippines, wars in the Americas. By 1580, Spain had military commitments on 4 continents. The cost was staggering. Half of all of Spain's revenue went to the military, and still, it wasn't enough. Stage 2, currency debate. The Spanish crown couldn't pay its bills with taxes alone, so they did what every failing empire does. They debased the currency. They started mixing copper into their silver coins. A coin that was supposed to be pure silver became 50% copper then 75% copper. The face value stayed the same, but the real value plummeted. By 1600, Spanish silver coins contained barely any silver. Merchants stopped accepting them at face value. Inflation exploded. Stage 3, the debt spiral. Spain borrowed constantly from Italian bankers, German bankers, anyone who would lend. By 1557, less than 20 years into Philip's reign, Spain declared bankruptcy. They defaulted on their debts, restructured, and kept borrowing. They declared bankruptcy again in 1560, again in 1575, and again in 1596. 4 bankruptcies in 40 years. Each time they promised reforms, each time they went right back to borrowing and spending. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. Here's what people don't understand about Spain's collapse. They had all the gold and silver in the world, and it destroyed them. Because when you have unlimited money, you stop producing. Why grow food when you can import it? Why build ships when you can buy them? Why innovate when you can just spend? The Spanish nobility considered work beneath them. Manufacturing declined. Agriculture stagnated. All the wealth flowed into importing goods from other countries. The gold and silver from the Americas went straight back out to pay for French wine, Italian silk, and Dutch goods. Spain became a conduit. Wealth flowed through them, but none of it stayed. By 1600, Spain was producing almost nothing. They were entirely dependent on imports and entirely dependent on silver to pay for everything. When the silver mines began to deplete and production dropped, the entire system collapsed. Stage 5. Social decay. With the economy failing, crime exploded. Beggars filled the streets of Madrid. Productive citizens immigrated. The best minds left for France, England, and the Netherlands countries that were building, creating, and growing. Spain was left with bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. No one was creating wealth, only consuming it. By 1640, Spain lost Portugal. By 1650, they lost the Netherlands, their richest territory. By 1700, the Spanish Empire was a shell, still large on paper, but economically dead. They went from the world's superpower to a secondary power in less than a century, and they never recovered. Spain today is a regional European country, pleasant, cultured, but irrelevant on the world stage. The descendants of the conquistadors are now a tourist destination. That's what imperial collapse looks like. Let's fast forward 300 years to Britain in the 1900s, the empire where the sun never set. At its peak, Britain controlled a quarter of the world's land and ruled over 400 million people. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every major trade contract was in pounds, and every central bank held British bonds. London was the financial center of the world, and just like Spain 300 years before, they thought it would last forever. But the same pattern was already underway. Stage 1, military overextension. By 1900, Britain had military commitments everywhere: India, Africa, the Middle East, China, the Pacific, the Caribbean. They were defending territory on 6 continents, and the cost was enormous. When World War I started in 1914, Britain faced a choice: stay neutral and watch Europe tear itself apart, or jump in and bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight. The war cost Britain over $40 billion, which is $1 trillion in today's money. They borrowed from everyone, but mostly from the United States. By 1918, Britain owed America billions. The world's creditor had become a debtor, but they'd won the war, kept the empire, and thought they could rebuild. They were wrong. Stage 2. Currency debasement. The pound was supposed to be backed by gold, but the war had drained Britain's gold reserves. They had shipped gold to America to pay for weapons, food, and supplies. By 1920, their gold reserves were half of what they were in 1914. Still, they tried to maintain the pound's value, going back on the gold standard at the pre-war rate in 1925. The problem was, this made the pound overvalued. British exports became too expensive, manufacturing declined, and unemployment soared. To defend the currency, the government had to keep interest rates high, which crippled the domestic economy. By 1931, they couldn't hold on any longer. Britain abandoned the gold standard, and the pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The global reserve currency had just admitted it couldn't keep its promises. Stage 3, a debt spiral. Britain never recovered from its World War I debt. Then World War II started, adding another $120 billion in costs and more borrowing from America. By 1945, Britain's debt to the United States and Canada was more than its entire GDP. The war was won, but the empire was finished. They couldn't afford to defend or maintain it anymore. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1947, Britain gave up India, the jewel in its crown and a source of immense wealth for 200 years. Over the next 2 decades, they lost everything else: Africa, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books. Stage 5. Currency collapse. The pound kept falling. In 1940, £1 was worth $4. By 1970, it was $2.40. Today, it's about $1.27. The global reserve currency became a regional one. Britain tried to maintain the pretense of power with a permanent seat on the UN Security Council and nuclear weapons, but everyone knew the truth. They were a former power, a museum of what used to be great. The empire was gone, and it never came back. Now, let's look at a more recent example: the Soviet Union. After World War II, the USSR emerged as a superpower. They had nuclear weapons, a massive military control over Eastern Europe, and satellites in space. They believed communism was the future and would bury For 45 years, they competed with America, matching them militarily with more tanks, missiles, and troops. But beneath the surface, the economy was dying. Stage 1. Military overextension. The Soviet Union spent up to 20% of its GDP on the military, triple what America spent. They had to match American technology, reach, and alliances, but their economy was a fraction of the size. They were fighting in Afghanistan, propping up Cuba, and supporting regimes everywhere from Vietnam to Angola. The cost was unsustainable. Stage 2. Economic stagnation. The Soviet economy stopped growing in the 1970s. Oil revenue kept them afloat, but nothing else worked. Factories produced junk, farms failed, and technology fell decades behind. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union, a country with some of the best farmland on earth, was importing grain. Why? Because central planning doesn't work. Innovation dies under strict control, and nobody produces when there's no incentive. Stage 3. Currency collapse. The ruble was never a real currency. It couldn't be exchanged internationally, and even Soviet citizens didn't trust it, using dollars whenever they could. The government had to buy foreign goods with gold and oil because nobody wanted rubles. When oil prices dropped in 1985 and gold reserves were depleted, they started running out of real money. Stage 4. Loss of empire. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. One by one, Eastern European countries left the Soviet sphere. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, all gone within a year. The strategic buffer they provided vanished, and the broke Soviet government couldn't stop it. Stage 5. Complete collapse. On December 26, 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. It took just 900 days from the fall of the Berlin Wall to complete this. There was no war or invasion, just an economic implosion. The military couldn't be paid, the government couldn't function, and the ruble became worthless. A superpower with 30,000 nuclear weapons collapsed from internal economic failure. The pattern played out once again: overextension, currency failure, debt, loss of empire, and collapse. Thanks for watching. Here's something that should keep you awake at night. The United States is following the exact same pattern of decline as past empires. Let me show you, stage by stage. Stage 1. Military overextension. The United States has over 750 military bases in 80 countries. We have troops in 150 countries. We're committed to defending Europe, Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines, all while fighting in the Middle East and countering China and Russia. Our military budget is $850 billion a year, more than the next 10 countries combined. And it's still not enough. We're stretched thin. Our equipment is aging, and recruitment is down. We have commitments we simply can't fulfill. If China invades Taiwan, Russia pushes into NATO, and Iran closes the Persian Gulf all at once, we can't respond. We are overextended, just like Spain, Britain, and the USSR. Stage 2. currency debate. In 1971, the dollar was taken off the gold standard, becoming pure fiat currency. Since 2000, the money supply has increased 400%. Since 2020 alone, we've printed over $6 trillion. The dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power since 1971. We are UNT mixing copper into silver coins. We're just printing unlimited paper. The mechanism is different, but the result is the same. Debasement. Stage 3, the debt spiral. The United States owes $36 trillion. That's 120% of our GDP. Interest payments alone are approaching $1 trillion per year. We're spending more on interest than on defense. We run massive deficits every single year, even in a growing economy during peacetime. We are borrowing money just to pay the interest on previous borrowing. That is the literal definition of a debt spiral. Spain defaulted. Britain borrowed until it collapsed. The USSR ran out of money. We're on the same path. Stage 4, loss of productive capacity. America doesn't really make things anymore. We design, we finance, we consume, but we don't produce. Our manufacturing base has been gutted, shipped to China, Mexico, and Vietnam. We import $800 billion more than we export every year. We are dependent on foreign supply chains for everything: medicine, electronics, steel, even military components. Just like Spain became dependent on imports while the silver flowed out, we're dependent on imports while our dollars flow out. And just like Spain, when the money stops flowing, we're in trouble. Check stage 5, social decay. Trust in our institutions is at an all-time low. Crime is rising, homelessness is exploding, and drug overdoses kill over 100,000 Americans a year. Our brightest minds are either leaving or checking out entirely. Fertility rates are collapsing. Political dysfunction is total. We can't agree on anything, fix anything, or build anything. The signs of decay are everywhere, but everyone pretends it's fine. It's not fine. Check. We are on stage 5 of 7. The Soviet Union made it to stage 5 before its complete collapse. So did Britain. Spain lasted longer, but the pattern is identical. We're not at the end yet, but we are deep into the sequence. Stage 6 is the loss of reserve currency status. That's when allies start diversifying their holdings, when global trade moves to other currencies, and when all those dollars come flooding back home because no one needs them anymore. We're already seeing the early signs. BRICS nations developing alternatives, central banks buying gold, and major deals for oil being done in other currencies. The cracks are forming. Stage 7 is collapse. Not a gradual decline, but a sudden implosion. The Soviet Union went from superpower to non-existent in 900 days. Britain lost its empire in 20 years. When the reserve currency fails, when the debt becomes impossible, and when the military can't be funded, an empire doesn't decline gracefully. It collapses quickly and brutally. 3 empires followed this pattern. Spain, Britain, the USSR, each believed they were exceptional. They were wrong every single time, and we're telling ourselves the same lies right now. But the pattern doesn't care about exceptionalism. The math is relentless. You cannot spend beyond your means forever. You cannot maintain an empire without productive capacity. The sequence is locked in. The only question is timing. Maybe we have 10 years, maybe 5, maybe less. But the pattern says collapse is coming. And when it comes, it will be sudden. If this opened your eyes to where we actually are in the sequence, subscribe. Because when we hit stage 6 and 7, you'll want to understand what happened and why. The answers aren't hiding in the future. They're written in the past, and I'll show you where to look.